o'clock, so we'll go ahead and get started. We did already call this meeting to order. At 12 o'clock today, we had facility tours today at all the different facilities. So we've been together, we left the meeting open. So we are moving right into number 3, which is the approval of the agenda. However, we do have an amendment that we want to make. We're going to add item E to business and discussion items to discuss the drainage change order at the stadium. So with that change, then I make a motion to approve the agenda. Second. A motion and second. All those in favor? Motion carries 7-0. So then we'll move on to recognition of guests. Appreciate everybody being here. Thank you. Receive communications. Does anybody have anything to add? Share? Okay. Move on then to citizens open forum. And we do have 2 individuals signed up this evening, both on the same topic. So if possible, I'd like to ask you guys to speak potentially together if you can, or in that format, if that works. Okay. But before I move on, I'll read this since it's been a minute since we've had someone speak. The board appreciates patrons taking time to talk with us about policies and procedures. We set aside this time every meeting to hear from the public. Your comments should be directed towards board policies or the procedures our administrators established to carry out those policies. This is not an appropriate time or place for patrons to make comments of a personal nature about any district employee or student. Persons making comments which violate the privacy rights of district employees and students will be asked to stop speaking or cease their remarks. If a patron or parent has a concern with one or more employees, the board will refer that person to the appropriate administrator, and the board will follow up at a future meeting. Persons speaking will be allowed 3 minutes each to express their opinions. In cases where a large number of patrons have similar opinions, a single speaker should be chosen to represent the larger group. Thank you for taking your time to discuss district business with the board. And Melanie Musselman and Shauna Sterling, topic is CCCHS graduation location.
Okay, I just wanted to bring up this topic, that back in February, as a senior parent, I received an email from the young CCCHS principal about that tentatively graduation be in the auditorium, limiting 10 tickets per graduate. It's also my understanding concerning this that the senior class officer spoke to Mr. Young and he denied the request to have it in the gym. I have spoke even today with another senior class officer, and she said the whole senior class, in her words, were upset by the location choice. I know that I was hoping that a senior class officer could be here tonight. They had prior work commitments, so that's why they were not able to be. At least the ones I talked to were not able to come tonight. But my big concern I have with this is that having it in the auditorium limits attendance, not only for graduate, but the entire community. I feel that this shuts out the community unnecessarily when we have a gym that we, host a lot of nice sporting events in and other events. Why can't it be in the gym? I have spoke with a few board members expressing my concern prior to the meeting tonight, and they were going to explore the option of the gym. I did not see it on the agenda, so that's why, therefore, I want to come and express my concerns during the open forum. The auditorium has only been an option in the event of inclement weather for previous graduations. And I know some of you on the board have even graduated in the gym. So I really feel like for pictures and for whole visual, the gym presents a much better location for graduation. Looking back at my high school, which was also a graduating class in the 60s, we had it in our gym. So in closing that I'll let her also, Shanna also expressed about this. When the stadium was sold, I just wish this would have been addressed prior to not, so that we could have had a plan in place going forward before it now here in March. Graduation is 2 months. So thank you.
When you chose to sell the stadium, you did so without thought of our graduates. So please give us the ability to have the best option for our students now. And I know that the board makes the decision of the date and the time of graduation, but you chose to take away our option to graduate where we normally would. So I ask you to interject and in that now and help us get our students the best possible option. We would like to be able to take ample photos to be able to see our students better lighting, and to be able to invite people that are very special to our kids without a limited number of guests. So please consider that, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Positive board comments. Anybody have anything to share this evening?
Congratulations to the boys basketball team going to state and the Wakefield girls basketball team going to the championship in sub-state. And then also all of the fine arts competitions that are happening right now this time of year, the Charlotte Web that just happened and coming up on Friday. I think it's a fine arts too.
The mural that finished up at Mountain today. That's awesome. We got to see it live and in person. That was fun. Lots of really good things I'll add that we got to see today. You know, lots of work, you know, at the hands of people that will make all of this possible for our students and really in our community. And I mean, in my opinion, it was a great day. Really a lot of positive things happening in our schools and with our teachers and our staff. So I felt real positive about the visits today and the facility tours. So lots of good things too for us to, you know, continue to add to the budget and to work on as we continue, you know, with our capital outlay budget. And we allocate funds in the right spot. So it was, in my opinion, a good day.
I wanted to thank the local business owners that have been taking their time to come in to speak, like to the Garfield and middle school students during different career path opportunities for them. They're taking their time to come into the school and share with the kids. And then other places of business are allowing the kids to job share them in there. And I know it takes a lot of effort to have students working in your facilities. And I'm really thankful for our community for the support that they give our students and allow them to have those extra opportunities. And we shouldn't take it for granted that our patrons are so giving of their time to our students. And then along with the basketball teams, I wanted to congratulate our state wrestlers. I'm very excited for them, and a special congratulations to Brett Loader and Luke Young for their titles and all the team for their hard work. It's fun to cheer on the kids and what they love to do.
And Gabby Cox.
Oh yeah, it's Gabby. Yes.
Good. Anybody else? Let's move on then to the consent agenda. There, anything I'd like to discuss further? No questions, then we'll take a motion to approve the items in the consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Motion, do we have a second?
Second.
A motion is second. Any further questions? All those in favor? Motion carries 7-0. So then we'll moves us right along to reports. Anybody have any board reports to share today? And then we're gonna get a legislative update. And also some reports.
That was my only report that Mr. Nelson has it in his. It's been following the legislative session very closely.
A lot happening. Yeah. Anybody have anything? Okay, we'll move on then to the superintendent's report.
Yeah, thank you. Legislative update, I'm sure many of you were still in tune with Senate Bill 83 that was in the House last week. It did pass with 64 votes. Unfortunately, I think there was some things that happened with that I hope will unfold and turn out for more of a positive result as we move forward during the legislative session. Based on some of the information that I read and that we following in the Capitol, it sounds like the governor would plan to veto that bill, and based on 64 votes in favor of it, that would still leave them, I think, around 20 votes shy of overriding the governor's veto. And so I think our legislators are going to have to go back to work and hopefully come back to the group with a bill that separates policy and education funding. I think that's a pretty fair request, at least from my eyes, is to separate policy and educational finance. Again, from my point of view and many educators across our state, you know, especially as it has to do with vouchers or ESAs, which are essentially the same thing. You know, they've been tried in many different states. And to my knowledge, not any of those states that have attempted it have been successful. It's actually led to a lot of fraud and tax evasion in the states that have given it a try. And again, most of the educators that I speak with, even our educational, our big groups, KNEA opposed the bill, KSB opposed the bill, USA opposed the bill. And these are folks that advocate for public education every day. And again, I think the things that I hear these groups saying is, you know, it's not that public education is against school choice, but if it's required for public schools to abide by rules, which it should be, abide by oversight and regulation. Our public schools do all these things. We're required and obligated to annual independent audits. We're obligated to follow rules. We're obligated to provide state assessments. But this bill, Senate Bill 83 with school choice and vouchers, is giving public tax dollars to private schools with no oversight or accountability. And I think that's the big thing. Again, not against school choice. Parents should have a right, but if we're going to give public tax dollars to private schools, in my opinion, they need to be held accountable in the same manner that public education is. And I think that's why we saw so many, even so many Republicans saying no to ESAs and vouchers. Our local elected official, I want to thank Lewis Bloom for standing strong as a first-year guy and him recognizing how that piece of legislation could jeopardize public education and finance across our entire state. And so again, a thank you to Lewis Bloom, because I know he had a lot of pressure on him from his party to vote in a certain way. And he stood strong and voted for what he believed was right. And in my opinion, that's right for public education. And so that will be something to watch how that one unfolds. It's a little confusing too, because the House Education Committee last Monday kind of kicked out their version of what they would like the K-12 budget to include. And it does get a little confusing because it includes some of the things that were in Senate Bill 83, but it also doesn't include some. And so I'm not sure exactly what that strategy is, but some of the main pieces that they talked about to be added to what their version of the school finance bill would be. And there were some other bills hanging out there, or not Senate bills, House bills, 2030 and 2040 specifically, that they kind of lumped in with the education finance bill that I think they're gonna move towards. And one of those was the open enrollment bill. And that was the one last year where they, again, included policy within the school finance bill and did that open enrollment where it requires local school districts to abide by certain enrollment numbers and rules, and basically gives us no choice in accepting students or not accepting students who don't live within our school boundaries. And obviously that doesn't take into account the anomalies of smaller districts, larger districts, medium-sized districts, that it really takes the local school board's decision-making out of play as it relates to enrollment into their school district. And so I think it was a good thing in the bill where they were trying to, I think, do good and say, hey, we want to exclude teachers, children from the open enrollment bill, which I think is a good thing. So my understanding is they lumped that into the school finance bill that they're gonna bring forward. But then they added some other things to it. They added some amendments that include a parent portal. The requirement the school districts would publish the bibliography of every book in your library. House Bill 2040, I believe it was. Right, 2040, might be 2040, but don't hold me to that. But it's the current year enrollment. Again, I think it's a good thing. So right now we receive school financing based on our previous year enrollment or the preceding year, whichever's higher. And this bill changed that and said that you could also use your current year enrollment. And for the growing districts, even for our district who's growing, which is an anomaly in districts our size, would be a positive thing because we could use current year, preceding year, or prior year or preceding year. And so I think that was a good thing. Unfortunately, they also added some other things, amendments in there with that I don't believe are as positive potentially for public education. House Bill 2030 was also included, which is a bill that would allow non-public school students to participate in public school sports and activities with no funding to come along with that. So that would require either private school, homeschool, different situations like that, that didn't have students that didn't attend public school would force school districts to allow them to participate in athletics and school activities, which again, potentially not opposed to, but if it doesn't come with the funding that it costs to support those programs, our sponsors, our coaches, the equipment, transportation, I mean, those things are great for our students, but they also cost money. So I believe it's unfair for legislation to force a local school board to make that decision and not adequately fund that. And so that's a little bit of a scary one for me, but indications last Monday appear as though the intentions of the K-12 Education Committee are to lump some of those policy things into any school finance bill that they approve. So if you're whatever your personal stance is with that, but knowing those things, I would encourage you to reach out to your local legislator and let them know how you feel about that one way or another. And then there was a one, and maybe I'm not even necessarily opposed to it, it's just interesting. There was a bill that I'm not sure if it got lumped into the education committee one or if it's still on its own. I was a little unclear on that, but it was a bill that would allow local districts to pay school board members. Thought that was interesting. And so finally,
That's for the.
there, Jeff, what is it, year 28? No, 28.
29 in June.
But those are kind of the highlights right now. And so we'll see as we, close out on the session on how they sort through some of these things. There's a lot of talk around special education funding. And we all know that it hasn't been statutorily funded for a long time. It's supposed to be at 92% or at 71%. It appears as though there's a lot of momentum to fully fund special education, which I think is good. Unfortunately, with Senate Bill 83, it did get thrown in as in my opinion, a tactic to try to get another piece of legislation that wasn't as popular, but again, I think the big things are what I'm hearing from education lobbyists and supporters is nothing against school choice. Just please have accountability in there for wherever our public tax dollars go. Let's make sure accountability follows the money. And as it relates to, special education funding, let's find a way to do that and meet the statutory obligation of fully funding special education, because that money can then be that we don't have to supplement any longer would be able to be used for all students and all staff. And so, again, special education is a highly important program, highly important to our students, to our families, that those programs serve. It should be fully funded. It needs to be fully funded. Right now, we're supplementing that program by about $650,000 to $700,000 a year. So you think about over the last 10 years, that's in the neighborhood of $7 million that we could have put back into general education to serve all students and all teachers. So that's kind of my soapbox. Sorry if I added too much of my personal opinions, but again, be engaged, advocate for what you personally believe in for our district, for your family, for your kids, for your grandkids, whichever way it is, they need to hear from us and not just people in the so. Staffing update, we are in a very good situation, especially comparatively. I've been at a few state level meetings with area superintendents over the last month or so. And when we look at the positions that we've been able to fill that are hard to fill across the entire state, and we've been able to fill those, has been a breath of fresh air. And to me, it means that people want to come and live and work in our school district. And so I think that's highly important. We currently have an ag teacher opening at the high school here in Clay Center, a third grade teaching position open at Wakefield Elementary. We did receive, administration received a couple of new staffing proposals from Wakefield and the high school here in Clay Center. And so those teams brought those proposals to their principals. Their principals brought those proposals to our admin team. Our admin team heard those proposals, asked some questions, asked for some data back on the impact that those potential changes would have on students and instruction. And we meet tomorrow to receive that feedback back from those teams so that admin team can kind of make some of those decisions, as many of them have secondary effects to other buildings within our school district. And so hopefully it'll be a short month between this board meeting and next, but hopefully we can have enough data available and information available to be able to report to you guys on some of those things. Some really great ideas, and proud of our staff for thinking through as much as they could on those and advocating for their buildings, talking to their principals about it, and then the principals take it to our admin team. So it's been neat to see our some of those procedural processes in place in our district and working, and we'll look forward to seeing what new things we might be able to do next year. So the stadium update, the restroom concession building, as you guys saw today, is framed up and it's sheeted. And our trades class, kind of the next 3 things that we'll be working on is putting doors and windows in, siding and roofing. And so they're going to start working on all 3 of those things. United Sports is here and excavating dirt. Added a little bit later on in the agenda, adding an additional drain pipe to the underneath the field as a secondary drainage piece for that, or for redundancy. Grandstand and press box construction will begin in the middle of May. And they think maybe a little bit sooner. It depends on final production. Advanced Electric has the electrical infrastructure dug and installed. The new electrical box isn't the right technical term, but the is in the light poles from Unruh are down, and they have a plan to get those moved up there. Those will be coming later this spring. They'll put all new LED lights on the top of those and some of the existing poles. We put out the concrete RFP for the owner scope piece of the project and hope to have that bid back to you guys to look at in April. And that's getting sidewalks from the parking lot, some concrete around the restaurant concession building, the added ADA parking that will add more ADA parking down on the southwest side of the site. And building pad for, we're gonna move the white storage building over back behind the restaurant concession stand. But everything's on time and on budget, and everything appears to be moving forward as it should. Some things even ahead of schedule, so good news there. Bad news for the night is we did lose one of our boilers. Went and showed you guys that area today at the middle school. And that building is operated by 2 boilers for heat and a chiller. For AC, we did replace the chiller. It is new and in place and running and working. Unfortunately, one of the boilers, which was original from the new building, and what we decided today was built in 93, so it's 30 years old. So they're both 30 years old, and so we have a few options that we need to look at, and we've asked for some data back so we can make a good educated decision on the best approach. Several different options. Unfortunately, the boiler that is still working is behind or is in front of the one that is not working anymore. And so the simple fix would be to just put a new one in, but if you put a new one in and the other one goes out, they won't be able to get to it, so they'd have to take it back out and redo it. And so one option would be to move the working one to the front, put a new one in the back, and do one new boiler. We could replace both boilers and upgrade both and be set up for the next probably 30 years again. And so some decisions to make, waiting back on some more solid budget numbers and plans and approaches, and cause and effects of decisions on, do you just do one new one and keep using one of the old ones? It's at 30 years. Do you do both of them while they're there? What's the cost difference? So those kinds of things. So I would hope to have some more finite numbers and options for us to consider at our next meeting. And it's 3-4 months to get those boilers in, and then a scheduled timeline to get when they can get them put in. And so ideally we want to hit our colds before our cold season hits. Next fall, we need to move sooner than later so that we're not running into schedule issues or lead time issues. And so look forward to more information on that. In regards to a couple of our citizens open forum comments today, our administration team has been evaluating all options for graduation. And I'm not going to pretend to know a thing about how to run or operate a graduation. We rely and trust that our administrators are come up with a good plan and be able to accomplish that and carry that plan out. Using the gym is at the top of their list for graduation. They're just finishing some of the operational and organizational pieces to what that would mean. And so they've been considering all options from along. And I think, Melanie, you pointed it out, that's why the note that went to parents, it said tentatively early on, because they have been evaluating all those options. And if they can find a way to do it and get organization and operations to get that done, and the gym makes the most sense, I have every confidence in them to do that. So that's all I have.
Any questions for Mr. Nelson? Any comments related to the boiler or anything that we saw today that we want to share? You spelled it out, really great. So we'll get more information back next month on what. Okay, thank you. That moves us then, I believe, to Anita's report. Metallic.
No, I just put our current staffing needs. Thought I'd just let you know that our alternative licensure path, we have quite a few people on, and I think that's just gonna be our future, probably. I hope, this year we were able to use, and I put a little bit about that emergency substitute, because that's supposed to go away, and we had to utilize that for a teacher this year, so I hope that, that doesn't, and we're allowed to have those extended days for next year. So, and I think I included Tom's newsletter this last time. I had been and thought maybe we're trying to highlight different people, so.
Yeah, I thought that was nice.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that.
We do that.
And I'll
every
just say
month.
thank you to Anita and Tom, and our TELEC in general, because our teachers on alternative licensure path, that's a grow your own, that's a grassroots grow your own program to ensure that we have staffing for the future. So good job. I think that's a model grow our own program and something that we need to continue to do. So,
Do you mind just giving maybe a few comments about that emergency substitute piece? I mean, I think it's nice to read the comments here, but it might be helpful for, the public and people in the audience to understand it, maybe just a touch more.
Yeah, and I don't know exactly how many days that they're limited to before, but during COVID, they didn't limit them on how many days. So for us, we didn't have a teacher. We had one leave. Husband got a job somewhere else and had to leave us right at the beginning of the year. And so we were able to hire someone who actually is one of our grow our own. She's a para, had been a para for us, quit working for us at Wakefield. Actually, she worked at Wakefield and Riley to finish her degree. She's doing that right now, but she subbed for a whole semester as a special ed teacher for us in Riley. And now she's here doing maternity leave for a couple of people. So truly this year, she worked full time by the time she gets done doing that. But how many days is it?
It was around a month, in a consecutive.
And that's how long that they can do that. And this is, tentatively, they're not going to allow any more than that after this year. And that really does hurt us. It hurts us in getting substitutes for, especially maternity leave, because they're longer than that. But for us, it was actually a teacher. We needed that this year.
And depending on your building, the way it used to be, if you were a building that received Title I funds, first of all, you had to fill, which we do, we always try to fill as a certified sub first for our long-term leave. But if you got to that point where you were using the emergency sub, we had to report that to the state, submit letters to parents and families and those kind of things, so. Let's see that.
When we report staff, because that's how we get paid by our people. And when we report them, even if we have someone like that in the position, and even when we have our alternative licensure people, they're not highly qualified yet. So we still put them as a vacancy. So the state understands those are still all vacancies for us. We're filling them with somebody with an alternative license, but until they're highly qualified, we don't put them in as that. They're a vacancy. So we have a lot of vacancies in special education. We're only able to fill it because they've got this pathway where we can use emergency subs. And I think I've got 3 paras right now who are interested in starting the para to teacher that starts in June. So hopefully we'll get some more going.
All right, any questions for Anita? Move on then to Jacqueline, Director of Curriculum Instruction Report.
Started my report, just an update on our English language arts curriculum review, not much different from last month. We do have some teachers visiting. We had a Zoom today with one of the resources, and we have 3 teachers visiting a school on site on Wednesday. So next week we'll be meeting to make some final decisions. We're hoping to, with some of as we're finishing out the schedules and doing some pre-enrollment for the students, if we have any additional courses, we'll try to bring those to you next month. Hoping by May, we'll bring you the graduation task force update. I don't think it'll be in April. I do think it'll be more in May. I think there will just be a couple minor changes to start with here, but we do want that in place by the start of August. So this year's 7th graders, next year's 8th graders can build IPSs based on the new requirements. So for a period of 4 years, our handbooks will have 2 different sets of graduation requirements listed. So, put a little information about our summer opportunities, but it is also out there on our website. Have an elementary, obviously our elementary program at the middle school, we do have credit recovery as well as an enrichment program through K-State. And then that is offered on site here. We just, kids will get to pick a class and work virtually with some staff down there. Then our high school traditional credit recovery as well. So we actually had wonderful interest from our staff for working this summer. We have more interested than we have spots. So right now our administrators are working on placing people. But that was really exciting to see how many people were eager to work or fill in any capacity for the summer. We listed on.
If I may, real quick, just a reminder to everyone, especially on our elementary summer school. We spend about $280,000 a summer to provide all day summer programming for our K-5 students. It's all federal ESSER money with the intent to improve and impact learning loss. And our staff have done an awesome job, and we've averaged 70 to 80% of our K-5 students attending that program for the last couple of years. We have 2 summers left. So this summer and next summer. And then we have to, the federal requirement is we have to have that money spent by that year. And so 2 more summers, but very exciting program. It's been celebrated, it's been advertised, it's been talked about across our state. Several, many school districts are trying to model our program and are implementing it this summer and next summer. And so our state board has talked about it several times in their state meetings. Leadership at KSD has talked about our model and asked other school districts to use their federal dollars to do the same thing. And so I think it's really exciting that our district was kind of a front runner in that, and recognize the value in spending a significant amount of our federal COVID dollars on our students and our staff. Not only does it provide great learning opportunities for our students, but it also offers our staff the opportunity to earn additional income during the summers. That income and all those dollars stay here in our county by doing that. And then the next largest significant portion of our federal funds was to provide retention incentives. Our first one was $1,000 to every full-time staff member last September, another one this September, and another one the following September. And so when we look at well over half of our federal dollars have gone directly to our students and our staff. And I am pretty proud of that and excited that you guys supported that. So
I have listed on here the February parent-teacher conference results, and I know that's something that Mr. Nelson and I are gonna work with our admin team on tomorrow, as well as teacher expectations. They've all kind of had different ways of approaching them, but want to really get some ideas on what is the main goal. And maybe is a little different at each grade level or at each developmental level for each family that you meet with. So want to look there just so we can improve those numbers as well.
Why do you think the Lincoln budget is so low?
I think they had some optional ones in there.
I think Garfield was presented as if you want to meet with the teacher, or the teacher says, I need to meet with you. But if everything was going well, they didn't need to meet.
I know, some take on the student-led conferences, so it's the one-on-one with the family, and you can see like on Wakefield High School with the portion that didn't come in, instead they were presenting to the principal and the counselor. The kids were, so they had someone there. Some, the high school did more of a community night plus the traditional, so you kind of have both options in there. So everybody kind of just looked at it different. I did bring up to Brett, in the fall, our elementary teachers, they have a full 16 hours, and this one they only have 8. So I think that plays in just a little bit to their choices or decisions, but we just want to see if we can get those numbers up and have some common expectations at elementary, middle, and high. I do think it looks different a little bit at each level. So But definitely something we're gonna continue to talk about. Professional learning, our district leadership team day is April 5th, and then we have early release on the 6th. The middle school is our last building to do a crisis drill, and we will be doing it on that day on the 6th. So we'll make sure communication goes out to the public, not just the parents, but the public as well. Just that it's a drill and to just stay away while we're trying to get that taken care of, and it's just as much good for our emergency personnel as it is for us. So we're excited to get that one in. I listed here just the amount and how many senior laptops we have sold over the last 2 years, and our anticipated price for this year is considerably higher, but the device is also only 3 years old. But Apple has changed the operating systems now, and so it is not worth quite as much as we maybe had thought a 3-year-old device would be worth, just because of the changes that they've made. We are looking with your guys' blessing here. We'd like to do the same thing, but we have never done this with our staff laptops. We've never let them buy. We've always just recycled, but we've had a lot of staff interest from people, and we wouldn't offer this to people who are leaving or retiring outside of a cycle. But if we're at the end of a cycle, and we're gonna, whether that we get the money from them or the recycling company, either way, we're looking at about $225 for the staff laptops. We have a technology advisement team as well as a curriculum team, and got some feedback from them as well as administrators on if we want to pursue this, and it is something we'd like to pursue. We would, make sure we tell them that it's now, if you buy it, it is now personal use, not school use. We have the infrastructure in place to support our school issued devices, not personal devices. Our technology team is now no longer your technology support. You have to find your own. And if we have once the certified have had the opportunity, we'd have classified, we'd give them the opportunity as well.
So the 225 is what the recycling company would offer us per computer.
Yeah,
I think that's
for
a-
the staff.
I think that's a great idea. I don't see if we're gonna be getting the same amount of money from recycling. I feel like we should offer it to staff.
So, and the senior ones are pricier, but they're also only 3 years old. They're not five, so. And then any of them that are not purchased, both on the seniors and the staff, will get turned into recycling. So
But we're only doing half the staff.
half of them this spring, the other half will be the first part of the fall.
Oh, okay.
So
Fiscal year.
fiscal year thing.
Got it.
Have to wait till next.
It's all the same school year.
It'll all be in the same, like, 6 months. It'll just
It'll
has
just be
to
two different
over two
budgets.
different budgets. Yeah.
Got it.
As far as the bid update goes, you'll see on the next item, we have the bids for 2 items. And we will have the obtaining bids for the 8th grade laptop rotation purchase, as well as some additional K2 circulation. And we will also, our copier bid is coming due as well. So we will be working on that one. You won't see the copier bid till probably May. Just because that one is good through June right now. We want to have it approved in May so that we have the month of June to. When we did the last one, we also weren't in a summer learning, so we're going to be pretty strategic on swapping out of the copiers, so. Something we'll look to do in July, and hopefully, get our 3 buildings that still have a week of summer learning, get them done first, and then. Coming up at the next few board meetings, you'll see some of our work with our district leadership team, and again, on 10C, we'll talk about our accreditation from KSD. So, any other questions? Anybody?
All right, thank you. That does move us into the discussion of business items, and first up, kind of a continuation of what Jacqueline was talking about is the technology purchase from our 5-year plan. Item A, so Jacqueline.
Sure, so this, we did the RFP proposal and have the attachments there for you. The first half of the staff laptops, 88,570. We budgeted 90, and then, one grade level of laptop circulation came in at 87,900, and we had budgeted 90 for that one as well. And on my report, I put on here, we haven't really spent much on our 5-year.
So you have 100, you said 87.9, but the other one was what?
88,570,
And that's
because
the,
there's two different lines that add together.
no, I just see the 70.
Yeah, there's the 9,000.
90, okay, remind me.
So yeah, the total purchase is 176,470.
That purchase at the grade level, it goes to what grade? I forget.
Well, no, this is the
this
one
is
that
the
goes
8th grade.
between 3rd and 7th.
Okay.
And what we're gonna do when we get it in the summer is actually do some rotating, because right now the same kids are getting new laptops every year. So we're gonna do some backwards. We're doing some movement of laptops over the summer, so that won't, we're gonna work backwards. And we're moving things, but yeah, it's that, I call it circulation. It's the 3rd through 7th grade. It's one of those grade levels per year. And we do have 10 laptop ECF. It's worth $4,000-ish that we could pursue towards that, if that's worth it. All of-
Say that again.
We did ECF, emergency
Oh,
connectivity funding,
okay.
and we had asked for 10 replacement laptops, and we never pursued it. We didn't make the purchase, period. So we could put in for that. It is a lot of work. We have to consider is our time worth just $4,000 getting back. Because we also have to pay Smoky Hill to do the paperwork for us as well. So that's something we need to look at. But an example, last year we got 40,000 for our 8th grade laptops off of that ECF funding. So we had money unspent from last year's budget. ECF helped us a lot. So, I mean, we were able to implement what we have because of some of our federal relief funds, but we feel like we have a good plan moving forward to keep them updated and have spread them out. You know, there's most things are gonna 5-year lifetime, or in our cycle they are. There's a couple things that will have to be 6 just to make it by, just to make the plan work, but it'll be okay. So. And I think left on the technology plan is the 8th grade laptops. And we have some fill-ins for like K2 iPads and Chromebooks, just where we have some that are more than 5, reaching that 5-year point. And then we still are trying to find student management software that works with Apple products. So we're still looking at that. And we have Bark on here. Bark, as well as some of our cybersecurity things, those had turned into just being yearly as well. So we'll just remove those.
Questions for Jacqueline about this request?
I move to get final approval to purchase the technology items as presented.
Motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further questions? All those in favor? Motion carried 7-0. Thank you. That moves us then to item B, which is budget planning. Nelson, I'll let you take this one. Start us off.
Yeah, so it's kind of that time of year where we start planning and preparing for next year's next year's budget and a lot of factors that play into it. And I just kind of wanted to talk through a few of those with you guys and kind of let you know on some initial projections and where we're headed and what we're thinking. Of course, a lot of this depends on what happens in Topeka. And so a lot of this, we have to use the best data that we have at the time to start planning. And so as it stands right now, KSD is projecting, has projected each school districts across their state our estimated increase in revenue based on what the governor put out in her budget, but also that takes into account the Gannon decision from a number of years ago that where the courts came and said, you know, state Kansas, you weren't adequately funding public education. So now here's what you're going to have to do. So we're done with the guaranteed base aid per pupil increase that the Gannon decision laid out. And now what the Gannon decision determined was that future funding would be based on the consumer price index. And that being the 3-year average. So what is the 3-year average of the CPI? KSD is estimating that to be around 5%, maybe just slightly higher, which would, in districts like ours that are staying steady or growing, it's a really good thing. Unfortunately, for some of our districts across the majority of our districts across our state that are declining in enrollment, it's not such a positive outlook. So I feel very fortunate that we're as a school district, as a county, that we're growing and our enrollment has been for the last 4 years steadily going up. Not a ton, but at least it's going in the right direction and not the wrong direction. And so KSD puts out a spreadsheet. I included it in your packet that shows the projected new revenue for every district across our state. It does not include the LOB portion of that because, as you know, LOB, which is we have set at 31%. And so we could reasonably predict that based on that 5% increase of our base aid per pupil at last year's enrollment, or sorry, this year's enrollment number, that 31%, we would get 31% of that 5% increase. And so new money wise, we're at about 475 or so on base aid per pupil within general fund. And so then we could reasonably calculate an additional 5%. 5% of 475 would be our total new revenue. Couple of things that we're monitoring very closely. The first is our health insurance premiums. As you know, we're a part of a statewide consortium where we purchase insurance for our employees. I think last I counted 90-some school districts are in that consortium. They've been notifying us for the last few months that the consortium in general has run out of their reserves or run their reserves really low. And so they're going to be looking to increase premiums to get that reserve back up. And so it's looking like it's going to be a significant increase in our insurance premiums. I hate to even speculate on percents, but certainly I don't think it would be out of the realm to be looking at 10% or greater. And so based on our insurance premium that we pay for every 1% of increase would be about $10,000. So we could be looking at a 6-figure increase on health insurance, which will hit hard. Good thing is we are again growing in enrollment, so we're going to be able to capture all that base aid per pupil, and we're going to be able to we're going to have to just look at all pieces on how we do that. I didn't include it, and I should have, and if I could dig it up really quickly, I would show you. But we've been monitoring. We have more than a handful of districts that we benchmark against to make sure that we're staying competitive with pay and benefits and a lot of other pieces. And for the last 4 years, since we started receiving the Gannon increase, we've been comparing ourselves against our same regional school districts. So it's pretty much the districts that we compete for staff with or compete for teachers with. And 4 years ago, we were in the middle to the lower of the pack, and now we're third from the top. There you go. August has it right there. Thank you. And so 4 years ago, we were right in the middle. And then the next year we were sixth highest. The next year we were fifth highest in base pay, and now we are fourth highest, only by $200. And the only districts that are above us in base pay is Salina, Wamego, and Manhattan. So we have significantly outpaced similar sized school districts as it relates to teacher pay. And that's because this board, you guys have decided every year for the last 4 years to give almost 100% of every dollar of new money that we've gotten in the Gannon decision, given it to teachers. Last year, you gave $1.50 an hour increase to all classified staff. That was the most significant increase that group of employees has received in a very long time. And we're going to just, in my opinion, we're going to have to continue to do that. Is that one of the factors why we're not struggling to compete with teachers and we're filling our positions? I believe so. And so I think we're just going to have to continue to keep doing that. I think it's something to be really proud of.
When
Yeah.
administrators are hiring, is pay and benefits a big component of that conversation?
So our administrators and teams do the interviewing, and then I make the offers to the staff financially, and every one of those, comes up in conversation from those employees. And our new ones, especially, when I was a brand new teacher 20 years ago, I didn't look at base pay. I was just happy to get a job. It was like, because you were competing with potentially 100 applicants for every position, especially at the elementary level. And now our kids coming out of college, they're watching it, they're looking at it, and they're shopping around, not just for money, but also for a district that they want to live and work in. And we're recruiting people who have no background in Clay County that come from other areas and that are choosing us over some of these other places. And is pay a factor? 100%, I believe it's a huge factor. So health insurance, we're going to have to look at salaries. Mr. McCoy and Mr. Easterberg have been looking at some creative and interesting ways to continue recruiting and retaining classified employees, specifically custodial and bus drivers. Those are two of our most challenging groups of employees to recruit and retain. And they put together a great proposal that will come you guys' way eventually. We just have to let some of these other money things shake out before we start evaluating all the options. But they've come up with some really interesting and, in my opinion, innovative ways to do that. Some recruitment bonuses to other employees is an idea. Hey, if you find a custodian or a bus driver and you get them to come work for us and they stay with us for a certain amount of time, you're going to get X amount of money. And some things, some districts, larger districts have had some great success with. So I'm really excited and thankful for the work and time they put into researching some of those strategies and tools. It ultimately, I think, a big factor will come down to base pay and those two category of employees. And I think that's going to be a big part, but also we can't just say, throw some money at the base and say that's going to solve our problem. So I think we need a multifaceted approach to recruiting and retaining bus drivers and custodians. We haven't been fully staffed with custodians or drivers in a long time. And so it's something that we need to work on and that we'll keep bringing your way and talking about. I did include in your packet a spreadsheet that I use internally. What did I call it? Budget planning worksheet. And so you can take a look at that worksheet and Jacqueline, would you pop it up there for me, please? So it takes a few things. The second sheet is our revenue or estimated additional revenue. And then at the top, what are our fixed or known expenses or increases for the following year? And those get plugged into the top gray area. And then that calculates out. And then tomorrow, well, I'll back up. 2 months ago, we put out a capital improvement request to our building principals. And our building principals for about 30 days to 45 days have an opportunity to visit with their staff, site council, whoever they need to visit with at their building. talked with maintenance staff, and they put in their capital outlay request into a sheet. And then we, Craig helps us, the various staff, we put numbers to what those requests would cost. And then we work administratively to try to fit those requests into our capital outlay plan based on each site. So that was step one in the new budget cycle. Step two, tomorrow at our admin meeting, we put out budgetary requests that come out of general fund and LOB. So one is a additional staffing budget request, and an additional materials, non-staffing request. And so again, they work with their groups and their teams. If they have things that they want to advocate for, whether it be people or non-people things, they would put on that list, and then we add them to the spreadsheet. Okay, what would those requests cost? What are fixed additional cost increases for next year? What's that number that pumps out at the bottom? And then how does that compare to our additional revenue that we're expecting? And that helps us maybe take some of the emotion out of additional requests, but look at it from a factual and a monetary standpoint and say, okay, we have X amount of new dollars. Here's the request that you put in. And just know that anything that's non-salary related will eat in or eat away from the potential money that we can put back on that base or put back into the salary schedule for teachers. And so that's a very short glimpse into, you know, that February timeline where we start working through some of these requests throughout the spring. And then things kind of go on hold until we get our final renewals for health insurance, and then property casualty, professional liability coverage, and our fleet insurance. And so that's a big number. We spend a couple $100,000 a year on just our liability, property, and fleet insurance. And so any increases that we receive in those, you know, health insurance or our property casualty have to be accounted for first, because we can't operate without those things. Then we'll work down towards any additional requests from our buildings as it relates to either staff or non-staff budget additions. And then that allows you as a board to look at those numbers as you go into negotiations and start talking with the association. You guys, we have a great relationship with our association. We've been really transparent with them in regards to how much money we have. I believe if you asked any of our association, they expressed it to me that they're appreciative because they hear from their colleagues throughout the state within their KNEA association, and they have expressed how thankful they are at knowing that this board has given as much as they could every year back to that teacher salary schedule and base. And they recognize that and see that. And I think that's really important. And one of the main reasons why, you know, we have such a great relationship with our association. Lastly, you'll see kind of a tentative timeline kind of by month on the budget cycle and the pieces that we have to accomplish this spring and into the summer. The hope is always that we can finalize negotiations by at least July 31st. Should be pretty doable as long as, you know, something really wonky doesn't happen in Topeka and they extend. Yeah, and that would be the determining factor. The thing that's not in that spreadsheet and that I have not included, but something that would be a factor, if they do determine that they're going to start working toward fully funding special education, that would have a pretty significant impact on our budget for next year. I'm a little unclear at this point in time, and my understanding is it would depend on what how the legislation reads. But my initial understanding is that if they do put that additional money in to special education, that we wouldn't see it for a year. And so it would be a lag behind. And so we may not be able to plan or to physically have that money until the following fiscal year. But again, I think there's a little bit to be determined there, depending upon how they would write that in or approve that or fit that into the budget. But again, initially, that's my understanding that it might be a year lag before we would see that. KSD is finalizing our audit now, which has a big impact on closeout and where we end. These next couple of months, our business office and Andrea have her going through each budget code, making sure that we have enough authority within each code that so that we can close out each of those funds. We'll start working down through general fund and LOB, taking care of those required transfers, those things that are in statute that tell us we have to move X amount of money from general fund or LOB to at-risk or some of those different special funds, CTE, a couple others. And so we work towards knocking out those required ones early because we have to do them. We have to get them done. That's required. And then you guys saw the first draft of capital outlay today. Next month, I hope we do a final approval of next year's capital outlay budget so that we can start, making some of those decisions, especially on projects that we could accomplish, the flooring, for example, that just about every one of our schools going to receive, that we can start, getting that RFP out, awarding some of those contracts and getting on schedules for June and July, because that's the time of year every school district wants them in their buildings. Hopefully in April-ish, depending on some of the factors I've discussed, we would start meeting with CCEA for negotiations, talking through a few things. We do our buildings and our district leadership team. I think it was last year, the legislation that got bundled into education funding, the building needs assessment, state of assessment review. We have to do that annually now. So our DLT is going to start working on the needs assessment, engaging their site councils and their building communities on the needs assessment pieces. Our DLT will work on that. Then it'll come back to our admin team. Our admin team will continue working on that. But the plan would be to have that ready for your approval according to the statutory deadlines. I can't remember what they are, but they're this summer, they fall. Have to be approved when we approve the budget, I believe. But building budgets will close out in May. So we'll ask them to have all their ordering and stuff done in their building budgets. They'll meet with Andrea and make sure they're not overspending within their building budgets or activity funds. And then that allows that ordering to come in, those requisitions to be complete so that we don't carry encumbered funds or requisitions over to the next year. We always have to do some, but it makes it a lot easier on our business office if we don't carry as many of those over to the next year. Carry as few of those over as we can. Get those outstanding requisitions closed, continue negotiating. And then early in June, we will attend KSD budget workshop. Hopefully the software comes out sooner than later. The last few years, it's been very late in June. And then at your meeting in June, we'll look at end of year transfers, what we're going to do there so we can close out those funds. Hopefully we get the software and we can start plugging data in for that. Because with the new revenue neutral rate laws and regulations, there's some deadlines that we have to hit, which now puts us on an extremely tight timeline according to the rules to hit that revenue neutral rate for publication and all of those pieces. And so really when we get that budget software in late June, Andrea and I will lock ourselves in a room for a week and get a lot of that plugged in, put in, find out where we are, because we have to be ready to show you an initial draft in July. And that puts us, and normally we could have the month of July to do all of that. And now we're squeezing it into 2 weeks. And so we're not the only one. Every district has to do that now. So, and then that puts us in good shape to then in August, do our, in July and August, do our appropriate publications. We have to publish that neutral rate budget hearing notices. And then that puts us in pretty good shape to approve a budget in August. So that's no approval today, information only. Just kind of wanted to give you a heads up on not only processes here, but processes that go on behind the scenes that take several months to gather feedback from our teams and look at that data and try to figure out how to put it all together. So it's ready for you guys to take a look at the appropriate time. So. Any questions on that? And I did include some of the, if you've never seen it, some of our budget edition request forms and memos and stuff that we utilize internally. I thought you guys might enjoy seeing some of that stuff, because I know those are things that usually happen behind the scenes, but happy to take any questions.
Any questions? Yeah. Right. Good. I appreciate the timeline too. It's hard to remember all those things, so thank you. Cool. Okay, that takes us then to item C, the accreditation. Looking kind of touched on it already in her report, but excited to hear what she has to share with us.
I am super thankful for everybody we get to work with, our parents, our patrons, and everybody. That 6 years of work is recommended for accreditation. So that is wonderful. Happy for our staff. They've worked really, really hard. Think about what different things they've done over the last 6 years, and through a little bit of different learning and attendance rules changing on us, just different things. It's been pretty amazing to watch that. We are excited for the next cycle because, when you know better, you learn more, you want to do better. And so we're excited. You're going through your strategic plan has been really key, and the timing has all just worked out really, really nicely. So we've already started that work, but wanted to include the letter we received from the ARC, or from actually KSDE. The ARC is the Accreditation Review Committee. There's people throughout the state that are on that, and then they send their recommendations up to Tammy. Actually, it's not Tammy anymore, it's Sarah, Sarah and Myron at the state level. And then they submit it to the state board. So our stuff was submitted in March for them to review, and then we'll look for the state to approve it at the April meeting. So I have attached a copy in there, the report they gave back to us, and it is something we'll use as we're also going through our needs assessment and setting our goals for the next cycle. So
I know it's public content, but I'd like to read just a couple sentences from that.
sure.
USD 379 has surpassed the state average in academically prepared post-secondary success in 2 of the 3 areas, while being very close to the state average in the 3rd. The system has increased its graduation rate over the 2020 data while dealing with and addressing attendance problem. And the system has been awarded 3 Kansas Can Stars, academically prepared for post-secondary, high school graduation, and post-secondary success. I think that's a great statement for our district.
Jacqueline doesn't give herself enough credit. So thank you, Jacqueline. This is 6 years of very hard work and great leadership from a curriculum and instruction and assessment standpoint. She's been wonderful, a wonderful asset to our district, and I can't thank her enough for all of her work. So thank you. And looking forward to another cycle. Like I said, I was at.
It never ends.
I was at, let's see, I was at 2 last week and the week before 2 different state level meetings, and I had 5 or 6 different soups and 1 state leader come up to me and say, I want to know more about what you guys are doing as it relates to your strategic plan, your board goals, and tying that to your next accreditation cycle. The word's out and people are talking about it, and I think it's coming from KSD, it's coming from KSB, and they're telling other district soups to say, hey, go talk to Clay County and find out what they're doing. And we don't even have the complete roadmap for what we're doing yet, but the manner in which I think we're attacking this from the top down, related to our board goals, down, tying it to our accreditation cycle, tying it to school accreditation for our next 5-year cycle, and also trickling it down to our building improvement plans, down to our principal goals, and even my goals as the superintendent, and you guys holding me accountable for those things too is highly important. So
Well, thank you for your vision though, in having us do that, because it's going to be beneficial for our students. I mean, to have all of that work together and go in the same direction is really the goal. You know, the board shouldn't be in the nitty gritty. We should be up in this level of planning and strategic.
And the district leadership team is gonna eventually give you feedback in all four of these. Right
Oh,
now,
great.
they're focused on the first one because that's where the KISA plan lives.
Mhm.
That's where your accreditation model lives.
But like
So-
you talked about already for stakeholder engagement, but at the administrative meeting tomorrow, you're gonna talk about conferences.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a huge component of stakeholder engagement. That's, you know,
And we've added to our district leadership team, when we break out at the end, there's a communications team that works on what goes back and what gets shared. And I think in closing, when it comes to the whole KISA process, one of the highest effect sizes off of a researcher from education is collective efficacy, and that's when we work together. And when we have a district model versus just building models, that's where we get the most growth as a district. So, and it looks different. You know, you talk about what does being able to read look like in an elementary building versus a high school building? It does look different. And so, you know, if we have a reading goal, we're then gonna give those buildings autonomy to what does that look like in your building? But we're gonna still be working towards that same goal. So,
and the hard work of our staff
yes.
to achieve those goals. I mean, they are the ones with the hands and feet working with the students. So just thank them for us. The next time you're working with them, please send along our congratulations for their accreditation for our students. That's really important when you're going on to post-secondary to graduate from an accredited high school. And I don't think that people realize the importance of that.
And I think this is, I apologize ahead of time for my soapbox, but this is just one other piece of accountability that should be in place for public schools. But ESAs and vouchers, they're gonna give public tax dollars away and have no accountability. They're not gonna have to go through an accreditation process.
A 6-year accreditation process for what it's
Which
worth.
measures your attendance, your academics, what you're doing with your IPS, what you're doing post-second, it's not just, looking,
They're not gonna have an accountability report published on their successes or failures.
graduation rate, you know, everything.
And sorry, that's my soapbox.
I mean, honestly, if I could stay on this topic for a while, I would, but I know we want to move on, but I mean, just super proud of the work that you guys have put in, I mean, through COVID too. Right? I mean, that could have derailed the entire thing and it didn't, so just congratulations to you and the team. It's great. So then we'll move on to item D, which is approval of student handbooks for 23-24. And then we've got them all listed there.
We need to really allow elementary students to have a cell phone at school. I don't think any of them should have them at school on elementary kids.
There are some medical devices that are tied into the cell phone. I don't know if our current elementary kids have them, but that might be the reason why.
I want to read, I'm pulling up one of them just to see what the wording is.
It's a fine line though, Jason, about, and I'm not saying you're right or wrong, but there is a fine line of
So they put
what as we as a board or handbook can then dictate to a parent what they should or should not be doing. And I'm not disagreeing with your statement, but I also think I'm not sure it's my place to tell a parent they shouldn't.
And in the wording in the handbook is that the cell phone should remain in the backpack. you know, it's been 9 years since I was a building principal and I had a handful of kids with cell phones, and the numbers that have them today are
Much higher.
much higher. We still, yeah, the watches have become a problem. That are connected to their phone, that has become a problem, and that's why they put in there to have it in watch mode. See, I don't even have one, so I don't know what it's called, but I think too, we have less and less families with landlines, obviously, and I mean, parents are, I think they know they're gonna have, some of them are gonna have them. It's how can we best control it to keep learning, but, you know, keep it away as a distraction, so. I know it's very frustrating when parents text and call kids, especially at the elementary. We would prefer this to call the office. We wanted to make sure that was put in there too. I'm the Scrooge who didn't buy my phone until my kids were 8th graders, but I know that there's a lot of kids with them, and I wish I had the percentage because we've asked, and it's pretty darn high. How many have?
Drop kids off at school in the morning, and all these kids are looking down, it's like, are you kidding?
I got my first phone when I was 30.
You've also joined the board before some of us were born.
Well, I'm I was gonna say.
That might have been one.
She told me today she graduated in 2011. I got kids older than that.
But do you see my, I mean, I'm
Yes
not
and no.
saying you're right or you're wrong. I'm just saying,
I just see it as the teachers don't need any more distractions.
absolutely.
I
I
hear
agree.
middle school and high school teachers that can't see the earbuds in girls' hair because their hair is in front of them. And so, I don't know. That's just my concern. And then also, what's the need for PG-13 availability to view that? Like,
Instead of rated R.
or just PG, or,
Yeah,
I don't know. That was in all the upper,
yeah, they're changing
like the middle school, the high school.
both high schools.
I was just curious why we need to allow, I get it, you have to have a parent sign for it, but I was just also curious on that.
I was thinking about that too, but I'm pretty sure the Outsiders movie that we watched when I was in high school,
Outsiders
or
would be
the
one.
Romeo and Juliet,
Gory's one for the
And
8th grade.
Glory for Civil
that goes
War.
in line with the-
those would all be considered PG-13. And
Yeah.
actually have an academic benefit to it, or at least get kids excited enough to read the book.
Any further comments? Okay, if not, I move to approve the 23-24 student handbooks as presented. Second, motion is second. Any further questions? All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries 6-1. Okay, item we added, item E, the drainage pipe. We have the stadium.
Yeah, so United Sports has been on site and their recommendation is to add an additional 12-inch drain tied into the drainage system underneath the field for redundancy. They consider it best practice. We checked with some engineers with SBT and talked to Sprint Turf, and United Sports is doing it at cost. So they'll put in a 12-inch drain pipe underneath the track, add 180 feet of pipe, and then put a head wall in on the other side. And that way, if anything were ever to happen with the current 8-inch drain pipe that comes out of the field would still drain. And it's at $14,509.
I just want to clarify the document in front of us is 10-inch.
Did I say, what did I
You said
say?
12.
Okay,
So
10-inch, sorry. Yeah.
Questions from Mr. Marson?
Do they really have to resurface that, or what, isn't the whole track gonna be resurfaced?
Recoated,
Oh,
so the rubber.
We'll have to put the rubber back down and then put that recoating over top of
Gotcha.
everything. hopefully they get it packed in there enough that doesn't show up
After, when they redo.
when they redo the whole thing. You know, it doesn't look like a patch.
When they get you started.
Well, you know what I'm saying? If they're going out that southwest corner, it's gonna be right on the corner or on the curve. And, they're gonna have to have a pretty good compaction so that when they put it in there, you don't have because you got two pieces that were done together and all of a sudden you have a gap. Because that was all poured, all done at one time, when they did that originally. So that would be the only concern there, but I suppose if it doesn't do what it's supposed to do, they'll come back and fix it.
I think that's.
As a track surfacing company, et cetera, et cetera. So,
I think this was how they were guaranteed the surface, correct?
well, yeah, I think they'll come back and fix it, knowing that they had to do that to make that work. But that would be the only concern, they're cutting a 14-inch swipe to put a 10-inch pipe in, so there's not a lot of room for wiggle.
Right.
As far as that goes.
And we talked about potentially boring under the track. I mean, that was something that we talked about today at our facility tour and
Kind of,
give the,
yeah, we kind of looked at all options, and so United Sports had some concern. And this is what they do for a living. They travel all over the state of Kansas and the Midwest building tracks and fields. And his concern was, yeah, we can bore if you want, he said, but I'm not guaranteeing that track if you bore under it. Because if it settles and you can't compact around that pipe, he was more sure of the
Cutting than
guarantee.
boring.
You might ask them about, when they put that pipe in there, which I'm sure if they've done it, but about maybe putting flowable fill around it up to where their 4-inch asphalt's gonna go. And then at least that'll get hard to some sort. And then they can put that asphalt on top of, you're not putting it on gravel or sand, what I'm saying, something that can shift.
Right.
But that flowable fill concrete plant, you can get it pretty cheap.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's what they do, Manhattan, placing around and replace sewer lines and stuff, they fill it.
Yeah.
With that all the way from where the bottom of the hole and up to where the actual surface is gonna be, and then put the new surface on top of that. So that might be a better way to strengthen it up, when you don't have the crack issue or the settling part of it.
I move to approve the drainage proposal as presented.
motion to approve. Do you have a second? Second. Motion and second. Any further questions? All those in favor? Motion carries 7-0. Okay, and that takes us to a couple of items that we wanted to get back on the agenda, which is a couple of things kind of looking ahead. So the next meeting, more of the capital outlay budget planning process that we started our discussion about. If you want to add anything over there.
No. I don't think so. I think some of the more pressing ones that we have to get on a schedule for this summer, we'll probably get an RFP out in the next few weeks and then have some numbers ready for you to look at in April and hopefully also approve that plan for next year.
And then future items, so one item, House Bill 2567. That particular bill requires that limits be set for the number of out of district students a district can accept by January of 2024. So something,
I did have a question about that. What's KASB suggesting we do? Are there other neighboring or, similar districts in that we have to set a number, but also.
That bill more or less is giving the open enrollment.
That's the
Yeah.
enrollment bill. That's
Yeah,
what we call
absolutely.
it.
Yeah, what I'm saying, but that's more or less what.
I didn't know. I guess my just request would be to get some additional information from similar sized districts.
Yeah, we're waiting on some, in the last policy update, KSB included they started adjusting
Okay.
policy
Okay,
according to the open enrollment bill, and we're all just kind of watching it and talking
Okay.
about it now, knowing that we have till January, but it's a big decision to
Yeah,
make
it's
and a lot of intricacies, and so
I was just wanting some guidance because it's such a large, I feel like the number is such a wide range.
and the unfortunate thing is, the way the bill reads currently, we'll have to set our numbers before we even know
Right.
what our numbers are gonna
Right.
be.
We have to set our numbers in January for the next school year, which we won't know until September 20th.
Yeah, so like for an example, this year, at Wakefield, we have a class of 26, 27 kindergartners. If this would have been in place, we would have had to set our enrollment numbers for that grade the January before, and I don't remember if we knew in January or not, but I don't think in January.
think we would have
knew we were gonna
anticipated
have,
that.
27. I think we knew we were gonna have a lot, but then
So then do you have to turn
Yeah.
kids
you
away?
can't accept them even if they live next door to the school.
Well, if they live in your district, you can't.
Not the way this bill reads.
That's pretty stupid. So I live in the town my school's in, and I can't go there.
If we set a
So how
limit,
would we deter, so how is KASB to,
we haven't gotten quite that far in
okay,
the discussion process, because
Okay.
everyone, I think, is
anticipating a
hoping that it
change?
changes this legislative session if enough people complain about it. Or that they'll use it maybe to get some other policy or financing in and say, fine, we'll change the open enrollment if you do da, da, da.
I thought that bill was more about that district bringing in out of district students, not so much within district.
It impacts your district kids. It is all about out of district kids.
But
But the secondary consequence to the bill is it ties our hands now on accepting in district kids.
Well, then I would think that if it kept it course like it is, that, you know, you just take I think we're gonna have 60 and you say, you figure you're gonna have 80.
So the challenge with that is every year we get, and I'll stay real general with this, but an example might be a student that's been expelled from Junction City Schools for bringing something bad to school. And we right now, because we can set our own policy locally, we can say, no, thank you, we're not accepting you. But
We
in
can't
that,
turn him down. Because we've said
Because
we're
we
gonna allow
said that
80
We're
kids.
gonna allow 80 kids,
And we have room.
That would be the thing, yeah.
which is what I had thought the bill was intending. I did not realize the impact it would have on our district students. Okay,
So you have to enroll fast.
well, no, I'm also saying that we need some guidance on that, because how do you then decide who gets to come to school and who doesn't? I mean, that's horrible to even think about.
Any other items? Anybody has to consider for future items? Kind of they're designed to kind of be,
not in the
something.
future, so next is next. What is a
Yeah.
big, not
Mhm.
regular items, not things that's on our board agenda plan, things that we do every year, but next meeting item would be something that's a little new, a little different, but we want people to have a heads up, hey, it's coming. It goes there. Future means sometime in the next 4 to 6 months, we're gonna be talking about it, but it's a bigger topic. Just so we can start talking about it, our public knows about it. If they have opinions on it, they can share it with you. And it's just hopefully a tool, a communication tool that makes people aware of some bigger things that are potentially coming at a next meeting or a subsequent meeting.
If you have anything, you're more than welcome to share it, or you can share at the next meeting as well, so. Okay, I think then, I think that takes us to executive session. So let's take a couple minute break. All right, we're back. I move we go into executive session to discuss items included in the negotiation letters of the board and the Teachers Association, known as letters pursuant to the negotiations exception under KOMA. The open meeting will resume at, let's go, 7:45. Back in this room. The executive session will include the board superintendent and council.
Second.
All those in favor? Motion carries.
Now you're on mute.
Okay. I move to go into executive session to discuss confidential student matters pursuant to the student exception under KLMA. The open meeting will resume at 47. Let's just go 8 o'clock. Back in this room. Executive session will include the board, superintendent, council, and Anita.
He did.
You did.
Okay, all those in favor, motion carries 7-0. Am I on?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. We're gonna come out of, executive session, to make a motion on the previous, I'd like to make a motion to retain legal counsel, Spencer Fain, for a student matter.
Second.
A motion and second. Any further questions? All those in favor? Motion carries 7-0. Okay, now we're gonna go back into executive session, to discuss private personnel matters pursuant to the non-elected personnel exception under KOMA. The open meeting will resume at, let's go, 8:07 here in this room. Executive session will include the board, superintendent, and council.
Second.
All those in favor, motion carries 7. Yes. Okay. All right, we'll now move on to the personnel section. So the personnel report, item A. Questions about any of those items listed?
I move to approve the personnel report, including supplemental updates as presented.
Second.
Motion is second to approve as presented. Any questions? All those in favor? Motion carries 7-0. Item B, contract renewal for 23-24. Questions about that?
I move to give final approval for contract renewal for the 23-24 school year for the employees listed.
Second.
Motion is second to approve as listed. Any questions? All those in favor? Motion carries 7-0.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Those in favor?